Thank you. Thank you, Joe Morelli, a great legislator, a great leader and advocate for law enforcement, for consumers, one of the most sophisticated advocates for regulation of and reform of financial institutions that I've worked with, and he and I have worked closely together on that area, which is important to us both. And we have a special connection because he has the same job in the Assembly that I used to have in the Senate, leading the floor debates, which some of my colleagues here fondly remember, no doubt. But you can be assured that Joe is a powerful voice for you in the legislature. And I have to say, I'm also honored to be here with some other great public servants who are here. And I spent time earlier in the day with the mayor and my colleagues who I served with in the state Senate, and Ted, who came after I was there. Special privilege to have you here. And I'm honored, if not a little amazed, by your presence, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you later. The experiences I had before I got here, I was listening to President Seligman talk about practicing law and teaching and being in different places. I have to say, this is a very special place. This is a great community. There is a tradition of people who are doing pretty well giving back to the community, the tradition that led to the creation, the building of incredible facilities like this. And the University of Rochester is just a shining star in the state of New York. We all acknowledge it, and thank you for having us here tonight. I am honored to work with great people, both who serve with me in the government and with great lawyers who work with me in my office. And I have to say that we decided to start doing forums like this in an effort not so much just to have a nice evening where I got to speak to an audience, but because we wanted to get some of our bureau chiefs and our lawyers out meeting with activists who work in the areas for which they bear responsibility, getting to know communities. I've made it a very, very high priority to better integrate our regional offices, and we have 13 around the state, with the major offices in New York City and in Albany. And it is very important to me that we serve as one office. A lot of the best ideas come from some of the places that you would least suspect. We have a very small office in Watertown that came up with a revolutionary approach to getting bath salts and other synthetic drugs off the shelves that is now being used in states all over America. So we're here to better know your community and to get the people who are actually responsible for really critical areas of our office out here to meet with you and talk with you. I'm joined, first of all, by the person who oversees all the regional offices, a tremendous lawyer and someone who I depend on a great deal, the Executive Deputy Attorney General, Marty Mack, and of course, Deborah Martin, who's the head of my Rochester office, who does great work here and does great work of statewide and national significance. I started out my career, believe it or not, as a deputy sheriff in a county in Massachusetts, in a jail in Massachusetts. And I had many fascinating experiences there. Several of my beloved Republican colleagues observed to me at one point, not these two, but they observed to me at one point, they said, "What happened when you were a deputy sheriff? Did you catch people and immediately let them go?" It was when I was trying to repeal the Rockefeller drug laws. But in fact, I had a lot of interesting experiences, and I have to say, working in the correction system, working in and seeing people who really at sort of the bottom of the operation of America's legal system gives you some perspective before you go off to a law school and then have a career, as I did, as in private practice. And I was an associate and then a partner in a major national law firm and represented big companies and financial services firms and stock exchanges and commodities exchanges. But it was always important for me to remember that the American system of justice only works when it works for everyone. And I have to say that the training I got in the private sector was terrific. I'm the first person in many, many, many decades to have spent more of my time in the private sector than in public work before I became Attorney General, and I'm very proud of the things that I learned there. And it was a tough place to operate, being in a Wall Street law firm. I had one partner in particular who would make us place our hands on a brief and raise our hand and swear there was not one mistake in the document before we would file it, and then he took great joy in going through it trying to find any typo. So it is very important to me that we provide you with the best services we can. As I campaigned around the state in 2010, and as I continue to travel around the state, it's clear to me that the 3 goals I set when I took office are important. I believe we're making excellent progress towards all 3 of them, but I wanted to share them with you tonight as a way of framing up the discussion that we're going to have. The first goal is to have the best public law firm in the country. I don't believe that people of the state of New York are entitled to any less representation than the big banks or corporations that I represented in private practice are. We have great lawyers. We continue to attract great lawyers. I am honored by the people who want to work with us. And we also have made a commitment to using the best intelligence of the private sector to inform our work. For the first time in history, I hired someone who's actually trained in management to be the chief operating officer of the Attorney General's office. And we are doing our budgeting differently. We're doing reviews differently. They've learned a lot in the private sector and got someone who is trained, as people are trained in management, to come in. And we're going to give you everything we can, and we're getting more with less, as we all must do in state government. The second goal I set for the office is important, and again comes out of my sort of unusual perspective on these things. In our office, we have we have 3 essential functions. One is we represent the state of New York. If these guys pass a law, I defend the law. Most of the time, that's good. And we defended laws, including New York's marriage laws and other legislation. We also defend state agencies. Our second major area of activity, and the folks who are going to be speaking here tonight represent that area primarily, is we have affirmative litigation bureaus. As I said, we have 30 different bureaus, and we do great work pursuing the interests of the people of the state of New York in advancing areas like labor, civil rights, environmental protection, and health care. And our bureau chiefs from those bureaus are here with us tonight. And we also have vast regulatory functions. We regulate all the nonprofits in the state. All the charities in the state of New York report to our office. No one designed this office. This is one of the interesting things about being the Attorney General of New York State. It's not like someone sat down and said, this is what the Attorney General will do. Those of us in the legislature, every couple of decades, we'd pass some bill and say, well, I don't know, we got these new non-for-profit corporations. Let's put it in the Attorney General's office. Sex Offender Management Bureau. Let's put that in the Attorney General's office. I had forgotten about that when I took office. The Martin Act, securities law. Well, we'll put that in the Attorney General's office. So this grew by accretion over centuries. And we have a lot of regulatory responsibilities. We can do a lot to help good businesses do business more effectively. So our second goal is to, with all of our work, try and make New York as competitive as it can possibly be in the global economy. Because you do get points in my office for helping good guys, not just for catching bad guys. And in every sector of the economy, whether it's real estate, whether it's finance, in show business even, the good actors always are our best source of helping you find the bad actors. So I've made an effort to reach out to the community and also to send a message to the lawyers in our office that we figured out that historically everyone who was regulating businesses in our office reported to a fraud prosecutor. So if you report to a fraud prosecutor, what do they want? Find fraud. So that was getting you points, and the fact that you might be helping some business operate more effectively, or some nonprofit get its business done more efficiently, or a real estate transaction go forward more quickly, wasn't really being credited. We've changed that. We've changed that atmosphere. And the final goal of the office was to pursue the idea that I think is somewhat tarnished but essential to the great project that is the United States, of equal justice under law. And that is what permeates all of the affirmative work we do. We look very carefully at a very simple issue. And as Joe mentioned, that I'm doing work on the collapse of the housing market, and I'm honored by the fact that the President made me the co-chair of a working group to look at this with my colleagues in the federal government. And you may have seen some reports in recent days and weeks of negotiations with a big bank. That is the work of my working group. That's the group that the President put me in charge of in the State of the Union address last year. And when he did announce our working group, he did it with a line that we've used over and over again. Equal justice under law to us means everyone gets a fair shot, everyone should pay their fair share, and there has to be one set of rules for everyone. And ladies and gentlemen, I found as I travel around the state when I was campaigning and as I continue to travel around the state, a lot of people don't believe that's the case anymore. And in two areas in particular where I focused my energy, having to do with the financial sector and having to do with public integrity and issues relating to abuse of state dollars and abuse of government office, people really had lost a lot of the confidence in that. If we lose confidence in the idea that in the United States of America, there's one set of rules for everyone, that no one is above the law and no one's beneath the law, we've lost the essence of what we are. So that's something we seek to focus on every day and in every area of our practice. So we have three divisions, in addition to the State Council, which represents the states, three divisions that do our affirmative work. One is the Economic Justice Division that works on things like frauds in banks. That's where our Investor Protection Bureau is. And the bureau chief is in here because he's in negotiations with the banks right now. But this just gives you an example of where people lost confidence in the idea of one set of rules for everyone. The notion that the folks that created the bubble in the mortgage-backed securities market inflated housing prices, allowed it to crash, wiping out the wealth of millions of American families, right? We lost $7.4 trillion in home equity in that crash because the wealth of the middle class was in the equity in their homes. The notion that they would not be held accountable was totally unacceptable to me and should be totally unacceptable to everyone else, lawyer or not, in the United States. So I went through this tussle with a bunch of other AGs in the federal government and my first year in office, and fortunately we were able to come to an agreement that we would conduct a joint investigation. And the negotiations you see reported on now with the first of the big banks to pay up a lot of money is the beginning, just the beginning of the result of that working group. So we do economic justice work, and we also have a criminal justice division that handles every possible type of multi-county crime. We have an organized crime task force. We're not a substitute for the district attorneys. We don't prosecute the street crime and individual crime. But for more organized crime and for some specific types of crime, we do have broad jurisdiction, and we take it very seriously. We are working in a variety of areas, including expanding our organized crime task force into the areas of gun trafficking and human trafficking, which had never been a focus of the office. And as someone who's worked in the criminal justice system essentially all my life, I have to say that there's a great change in awareness going on across the country in law enforcement. There's a change in understanding that we probably don't need to, and indeed can no longer afford the economic and social costs of mass incarceration in the way we do it in the United States. There are states like ours where the prison population goes down as the crime rate goes down, and I think that's the way of the future. There also is a change in consciousness on issues like domestic violence and human trafficking. We just busted up a ring in central New York where they were trafficking some girls as young as 15 years old, and the guy who was running the ring had, under the old system, the old way of thinking of law enforcement, gotten a couple of sentences for promoting prostitution, which gave you 6 months or 9 months, and where they treated the prostitutes as perpetrators rather than victims. We just went after them and nailed them for human trafficking, which can carry up to 25 years, and we got the prostitutes into shelters, and we were able to find out where they'd come from and get them treatment. And it's a very different way of approaching that problem. So our Criminal Justice Bureau division is at the forefront of a lot of those efforts. And then finally, we have what's called our Social Justice Division, and we have bureau chiefs here who are going to speak to you about the work of that division in great detail. We do work in pretty much every area of public interest. There's some areas where we have broader jurisdiction, some areas where we don't, but we're always looking to collaborate. And we have developed great relationships with a lot of our partners in government. We have been able to pursue areas that the Attorney General's office has never been able to go into through partnership. And I think I've learned over the years that it's always easier if you can work together. And it's amazing what you can accomplish when you can find where your common ground is and work. So I'm going to introduce them to you as we move forward. But this is just a sense of what we do in an office that is committed to high-quality legal work, to helping the good guys get their business done and get their work done, and to pursuing equal justice under law. So in addition to Deborah and Marty, who are here, and I think Marty is, who takes the lead in a lot of areas, is going to talk somewhat about our consumer fraud function, which is a very important part of our office and takes in a very broad range of issues. We also have Terry Gerstein, who's the head of our Labor Bureau. Kristen Clark is the head of our Civil Rights Bureau. Lem Stralovic is the head of our Environmental Protection Bureau. And Lisa Landau is the head of our Healthcare Bureau. So they're going to speak to you. And I hope that what you'll take away from this is the understanding that our office is really here to serve you. Our office is here to do a good job as lawyers, but also to, as is the great American tradition, to push the edges of the law forward, to see that when you have problems that are not being addressed in as complete a way as they could be. 50, 60 years ago, the cops did not break up and do anything about domestic violence incidents. That's been transformed. Issues of civil rights relating to the LGBT community have been transformed. This is something that represents the American tradition, which is a tradition of progress. And that's what we believe in our office. There are ways you think about civil rights issues or healthcare issues or labor issues, environmental issues that are being changed as we think about it. So we are lawyers, we enforce the law, but we also seek to change and improve the law. We both seek to be what we call transactional in doing our good legal work and making sure that given the state of the law now, we want to win the case for all of you, but we also seek to do transformational work. We're always looking ahead to the trajectory the law should be on, and we're trying to pursue a more just and a more equitable society for all. And that, I think, is squarely in the keeping of the American tradition and the tradition of being an American lawyer, quite candidly, which lawyers take a lot of ribbing. I enjoy talking to law students because there really is, this is a great tradition. The idea that everyone gets to be heard, everyone gets their moment in court. Believe me, the founders of our great republic spent more time talking about trials by jury and issues related to courts than they actually did about popular elections. This is tremendously important to the American way of life. I'm honored to be your lawyer, and I'm honored to carry this on. I'll come back at the end to speak with you more briefly, but now I want to turn it over to Deb Martin, who is the head of our Rochester office. And I have to say, one example of the brilliance of Deb and of the quality of lawyers we have here, and this is something I'm very proud of that we did in our office. When I got into office, I wanted to look at the issue of gun trafficking because I was concerned about issues of gun violence and illegal guns, and we sent undercover operatives into several gun shows and saw that they were not doing background checks they were required to do. And we instructed our undercovers to tell stories that indicated there's no possibility they could pass a background check, right? It was just, however outrageous the story, guns were sold to them and they didn't get a background check. Someone said that, my favorite was the guy who said, well, I got all my guns taken away from me. And I said, why? Well, my wife got an order of protection against me. The cops took all the guns away and now I really want to get her. So they sold him a gun. So we realized there was a problem with background checks, and then we busted some of the gun shows that we'd caught, but then Deb did something that to me is very important. Instead of us just, trying to harass these guys, she sat down with the operators of the gun shows and challenged them and said, look, you guys don't want to sell guns to people who are criminals and can't pass a background check. How do you work with us? How could we do it if we did it the right way? And they set up with us, they worked out this set of model procedures, Attorney General procedures, where they seal the perimeter of the show, hire off-duty cops. We have a set of tags that we've printed up where every gun going in gets tagged with the owner's name and the serial number of the gun. You can't get out of a New York gun show with a gun you didn't bring in without showing you had a background check. And after that, every other major gun show operator in the state came forward and voluntarily signed on to these procedures. So New York State is the only state in the United States where, with the cooperation of the gun show operators, the gun store operators, the rank and file of the NRA, and my distinguished colleagues from the Senate remember how warm my relationship was with the NRA when I was actually in the state Senate, when they had my name on a website with a sniper scope that would go up and down over my name so you could blow it up. I've actually developed this incredible relationship with these guys. I go shooting with them now, and we have gun shows. And 2 weeks ago, in an acknowledgement that the procedures that Deb Martin set up by negotiating with these guys and going around to gun shows and making sure they worked, are the best in the nation. Gabby Giffords and her husband Mark Kelly came to a gun show in Saratoga to endorse our procedures that were set up by Deb. And you know, if you're a bunch of gun guys and you have an intimidating figure like this walk into negotiating with you, you know you're going to give in. But believe me, she is as smart and tough as they come. And I am fortunate to have her in my office, and you are fortunate to have her as the head of our Rochester office. So with that, Deb Martin.